Previously on the Coach Harp Show.
Welcome to the Coach Harp Show. Today, it's an honor to have Dr. Chuck Morris. When did you start the NFL Health Lab?
Yeah, so the NFL Alumni Performance Lab, it's a long name, but we call it the Performance Lab, the concept started probably 3 years ago, just before COVID. And then the manifestation of it was a year ago. And the way it came about was really interesting. I was in the Middle East and I was working with the national women's soccer team in Palestine, in the West Bank. I was teaching stress management, emotional intelligence workshops to all of the medical professionals, social workers and counselors out of the hospital. And while I'm away doing that, attempting to give back, I get a phone call. And we were running a camp at my facility. And one of the people that came to the camp, his son, said, "Wait a minute, is this the same Dr. Chuck I've been hearing about?" Now, little did I know, he had been hearing about me from current players and former players and never knew who I was or where I was. And he came into our lab one day. We had the field work and he came into the lab and had such a great experience with one of my coaches. He called me, my coach called me and said, they want to talk to you. So we had a conversation. It led to the entire team of the national office of the NFL alumni coming to my lab. And I presented to Beasley Reese, the CEO, this concept of how we could coach all of the former players, how we can coach their families and the communities that they're involved in. And he loved the thought. He loved the idea. And basically a year and a half later, we have the NFL Alumni Performance Lab. That's a brick and mortar and virtual expression to take care of former players, their communities, and youth.
That's awesome. The next question kind of goes into the same thing that we talked about. When did you get involved with NFL alumni? I know it's same as the third question. First one was a lab. Now I want to know when and why did you get involved in the NFL?
Yeah, so when was about 3 years ago. The why is really pretty interesting because some years ago, it was one of my first marquee clients. I mean, this was I live right outside of Philly, so I had a marquee client. And we had a phenomenal experience, and he had an injury at some point. And as I was introduced into his life, it was post-rehab after his injury. And we were able to be blessed to have phenomenal success. I mean, better shape than he was when he left college after an injury that was going to end his career. And in this excitement, he set up a meeting for me and him to continue to work together and for him to still maintain what's called a workout bonus in his contract, which is basically if they meet certain parameters in their workout, they get a significant bonus. And that had never been done before. So we had a meeting so that the front office would sign off on him working outside of the facility with me and still be accounted as his requirement with the team for workout bonus. Harp, I'm excited. I'm fired up. We're going to get in here and we'll have a great time, man. We're going to change the world. I get in there and I'm young and dumb. And I'm telling him how phenomenal he is, the plans for the next couple of years, how he's going to continue to actually get better over the next 2 years. And I'm loving it. I'm excited. We leave. He calls me. I'm in my car. He's in his car. He calls me. He says, "Chuck," I'm like, "What's up? What did you do?" I was like, "What do you mean? Why would you say that?" I'm like, "I don't understand what you're saying." And basically what he said was his contract is constructed in such a way that the most significant parts of his contract is on the end. And then I went in there and talked about how I was going to make sure that he not just made it to the end of his contract, but by the end of it, he was going to be in better shape than he was at the beginning of it. and ready for a new end. I said, that's a bad thing? He told me, the way the business works, they don't see veterans make it to the end of these contracts to get this big money. And sure enough, he received a phone call moments later where me coming in was a formality. After that meeting, we told him no. And Harp, it broke my heart. This is why it broke my heart. He still paid me and all of that business stuff. But it broke my heart because I realized that he was a commodity and not a person. So 15 years later, the opportunity to work with the NFL alumni, that just woke all of that back up. And I had trained so many guys where this is my opportunity to not just deal with the guys that are playing, but to actually speak back to the men and their families that they're not commodities, and give them the type of resources they had, and in some cases better than when they were in. So for me, it was an opportunity to leave a legacy bigger than me of restoring men, just restoring their lives.
That's so cool because you're giving them, you're giving back, right? And something that people lose, a lot of the athletes, they lose your identity sometimes. Yeah. And then you're making them realize, hey man, it's okay, you're human. You know, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. As you're following your passion, I know this is going to be tough. You've created a lot of transformations. Is there any particular one that really sticks to your mind that comes really fast?
Yes, one that comes to mind, and I cannot use anyone's names, and I usually try not to do that anyway. But I had a particular person, a client, that was a client years ago in my continuum of life. And then later on, reached out to me again where I hadn't spoken to this person in years, but they still had my phone number. And they called me, and they didn't call me for themselves. They called me for their wife. Their wife was suffering with type phase 3, phase 4 cancer, and was in an extremely bad way. And he reached out to me to get some insight on some aspect of what was going on. Again, I'm not an MD at all. It was a question about science and muscle tone and bone density and things like that. So I began to help. Ultimately, she still moved forward and her life ended. A lot of things happened that extended the time that they said she was going to have. And I was blessed to be a part of that transition, and her life ended. And it was a devastating reality that I can't even try to do for myself. But this man was left with a wife-sized, God-sized hole that took him into a spiral. And after a year of working together virtually, I was only able to see him one time physically. So this is over COVID. Virtually, I watched him transform from where he was in complete despair to not back to where he was, but even without his bride, an even healthier, stronger, mentally, emotionally, physical man than he was when we talked probably 18 months ago. So for me, out of all this almost 28 years, I'm going to say that was probably the biggest transformation, because not only did I help his wife, but he called me for his wife, and then was a part of his change or metamorphosization into this new expression that he was in. So that's probably the biggest one. The rest of them probably really cool stuff and gold medals and Olympic champions and some other great stuff. But that one, in this moment of life, I'm going to say is the most impactful one for me.
I can't imagine that, especially dealing with the stage 4. Wow, takes a lot of mental power, and honest to you, man, that's a blessing what you do. That's a life-changing story, man. Thank you.
Right, I'm blessed.
Is there any advice you have that you want to share with us today?
Yes. I try to leave every space and every place better than I found in every conversation. try to get something that I didn't have and give something that I didn't have. So I want to leave this space. The reality of who we are as people, we cannot control the outside force. We can control how we interpret the outside forces in our lives. And granted, it takes works and steps. But I want to leave it in this kind of way as a point of reference. I can't control the rain, but I can control how I feel about getting wet. So I can put an umbrella up, or I can be the guy dancing in the rain. So the one thing I want to leave with us is, if we slow down when we're experiencing the issues of life, to think about what we're thinking, why we are thinking it, and then that we have the ability to change how we're thinking about the circumstance and find a way to use it as fuel to turn into a positive thing, that practice will absolutely change our lives. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking it? And understand that I control it. My thoughts aren't random. I can take that thought and constantly change the interpretation of it to find it, to turn it into a positive fueling moment for myself.
Oh, I like the fact that the thought and how you're taking control of your thought. That's so cool. If someone wants to get hold of you, what are some of the ways?
Right, and my team always kicks me in the head when I do this. So our Instagram, Facebook, all these things are NFL Alumni _lab. So Instagram, Twitter, NFL Alumni _lab, LAB. Those will probably be the easiest ways. And when in doubt, go into Google or whatever you use, .go or somebody, and type in NFL Alumni Performance Lab, and you'll get us.
I want to say, first of all, honored to have you, and appreciate you being on our show today. Thank you for your time, Dr. Chuck Morris.
Coach Harp, I consider it a true honor. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to this not being my last time.
Yes. Thank you. For everyone watching Coach Harp, be ready for more season 2 awesome interviews at www.coachharp.ca. Thank you.